morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How's everyone today?
Good. Great.
I'm gonna give Wendy a second to get the. Is it good? Ready? That was fast. Wow. She told me to ad-lib for a few minutes while she got the camera ready. So I prepared a whole ad-lib, but I'll do it anyway. Can you believe it's November already? Isn't that amazing? Just a couple weeks until Thanksgiving. Hanging in the greens right around the corner. Where's this year gone? It's unbelievable. The holidays are upon us already. Not yet. I know that some of you have already started listening to Christmas music. Wendy, can you black out the screen for a second?
Sorry, the punchline's already passed.
That's all right.
I'm sorry.
Some of you have already started listening to Christmas music already. Some of you started several months ago. I do love this time of year. The weather has been teasing at us a little bit at being perfect. I know we get good, nice, cool mornings, but it does still get hot in the afternoon. But the weather is there. It's coming around slowly. The pumpkin spice has been flowing freely.
Yes.
I'm sure many of you have consumed more than your weight of pumpkin spice lattes already. Starbucks now has their holiday, their peppermint mocha flavors out. I saw that yesterday. I think everyone will be happy to know that I've been working out, preparing for Thanksgiving. Yes, I have. And by working out, I mean just the muscles that I use for Thanksgiving. Basically my jaw and stomach muscles. But I'm giving those a good solid workout, getting ready for Thanksgiving. I do love Thanksgiving. We have a discussion in the car a lot of times with the kids of what's our favorite holiday. And Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday. Mainly because it's the start of Christmas season. Christmas is ultimately the best holiday. But Thanksgiving is the start of Christmas. So it's like pre-Christmas. And then you get a whole month worth of Christmas music and Christmas fun and parties. And then Christmas comes and it's great. And then my least favorite day is actually Christmas Day. As ironic as that is, because, you know, all the excitement's over and everything's done. So I told the kids, I said, I like Thanksgiving Day to Christmas Eve. That's my favorite time of year. Halloween was this past week. Anybody give out candy? Anybody dress up? Now, if you can relate, like I can, to growing up in a fundamental Christian household where Halloween was the devil's day, that we never celebrated it. And I always thought it was just because my parents were overly strict and you know, didn't want us to have any fun. But I really believe the truth of the matter is because they didn't want to have 6 bowls of candy sitting around their house for like 2 weeks past Halloween Day.
No, we really did.
Yeah, we really did. See, and the thing is I've almost thought about going back and outlawing Halloween in my family, for the simple fact is that I have no willpower when it comes to these bowls of candy. So if it appears that my suit is a little tight today, it's because it is. So, Halloween, a night that we reward people for pretending to be something they're not. Now normally we would call this hypocrisy, but somehow on October 31st we celebrate it. It's crazy. Hopefully you got some good costumes at your house. Maybe even some clever ones. Now we can all laugh at the ginger kid. The gingerbread man. It's pretty brilliant. What about this guy's confidence? God's gift to women. I can totally see Jeremy rocking that one. I like this couple's costume. Hopefully they didn't get arrested for assault and battery. Pretending to be something we're not. It's fun on Halloween, but in real life it's a struggle that we all face. The whole keeping up with the Joneses mentality is basically what fuels the celebrity tabloid magazines and TMZ reality shows that are wildly popular. After all, inquiring minds want to know, right? Our society has to know what everyone else is doing, what they're thinking and wearing all the time. I mean, look at the popularity of the Kardashians. What have they done to benefit society personally? And yet everybody knows about them. We crave internet viral status and want more than anything to be noticed, accepted, and recognized. We live in a world of fakeness. From con men and identity theft to fake news and political spin. And here we are, all of us, kind of like Fox Mulder, right? Saying the truth is out there. But where? Where is the truth? Anybody remember a guy named Frank Abagnale Jr.? Name familiar? He was perhaps the most famous con man of all time. He started at age 15 by defrauding banks and printing and cashing fake checks on fraudulent accounts. Then he moved on to bigger scams. He described an occasion when he noticed the location where airlines and car rental businesses such as United and Hertz would drop off their daily collections of money in a Ziploc or zip-up bag, deposit them in the drop box on the airport premises. So he went and rented a security guard disguise at a local costume shop and put a sign over the box saying, "Out of service, please deposits with security guard on duty," and collected money in that manner. Later he disclosed how he could not believe how this idea had actually worked, stating with some astonishment, "How can a drop box be out of service?" Later, Abagnale decided to impersonate pilots because he wanted to fly throughout the world for free. So he acquired a uniform by calling Pan Am, telling the company that he was a pilot working for them who had lost his uniform while getting it cleaned at his hotel, and obtaining a new one with a fake employee ID. He then forged a Federal Aviation Administration's pilot license. Pan Am estimated that between the ages of 16 and 18, Frank flew more than 1 million miles on more than 250 flights through 26 different countries. As a company pilot, he was also able to stay at hotels for free during this time. Everything from food and lodging was billed to the airline company. 1 million miles. But it didn't stop there. Well, he did sometimes. He would quickly put it on autopilot. He didn't know much. However, he did do this. He went on after this, and this was between his ages of 16 and 18. He went on to forge degrees from Harvard, which allowed him to pass the bar exam, as well as impersonate the chief resident pediatrician in a Georgia hospital for 11 months. Now, he said the position was not difficult for him because his supervisors did no real medical work. However, he was nearly exposed when an infant almost died from oxygen deprivation because he had no idea what the nurse meant when she said there was a blue baby. He was able to fake his way through most of his duties by letting the interns handle the cases coming in during his late night shift, setting broken bones and other mundane tasks. He did, though, however, leave the hospital after he realized that he could really put some lives at risk by his inability to respond to life and death situations. 11 months, he was the chief pediatrician resident. If you don't remember Frank, I'm sure you've seen the movie that was made about him. Catch Me If You Can, starring Leonardo DiCaprio in 2002. Frank now works for the FBI, helping to track down other con men. So he's still putting his talents to use. P.T. Barnum once said, "There's a sucker born every minute," right? We may be surprised and angered when we get taken advantage of, but the truth is we're really all guilty of running a con at some point in our life, pretending to be something we're not. Best-selling author and popular Bible study leader Liz Curtis Higgs tells about a lady from Texas named May who confessed about doing something that was quite embarrassing. She says a few years ago she and her husband invited a couple to their home for dinner. The couple bought a pot of tulips as a gift. She says the tulips weren't particularly pretty. They were in a clay pot with the bulbs partially sticking out of the soil, and they were kind of an ugly color, but they were friends whom they saw often, so May wanted to take care of the tulips simply because they were from them. She nurtured this plant, watered it faithfully, fed it plant food, set it outside in the spring, and brought it back into the house before the first freeze. She said she couldn't throw them away as long as they were still blooming. One afternoon, about 2 years later, her youngest son absentmindedly reached over and rubbed one of the tulip petals. "Please don't touch those, honey," May said. "It could cause spots." She was stunned by his reply. "Mom, this plant isn't real." Sure enough, he was right. For 2 years, May had nurtured a silk plant. It did seem exceptionally hardy, she confessed after the fact. Well, of course it was hardy. It wasn't real. Have you ever noticed that sometimes the things which are false is hardier than in life than the things which is real? Why do you think things like fake news is such a problem today? Some people are remarkably gullible, but after all, isn't everything on the internet true? Sometimes people who are pushing fake items as well as fake ideas are sources that we are supposed to trust. News outlets and the like. Years ago, the Metropolitan Museum of Art in Amsterdam put some of their priceless originals next to copies of those same paintings and held a contest to see how many visitors could tell what was true from what was false. Of 1,827 people who took part in the experiment, only 7 were able to tell the genuine from the fake. That's a big part of the problem. Some of those who purvey falsehood are pretty good at it. And why not? It's very profitable to take advantage of people. Ask any good con man or woman. And of course, even nice people fake it until they make it sometimes. That brings us, I think, to one of Jesus' harshest criticisms of the Pharisees from the gospel reading today. What did Jesus say to them? He said, the teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. So you must be careful to do everything they tell you. But do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach. They tie up heavy, cumbersome loads and put them on other people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to lift even a finger to move them. Do what I do. Do what I say, not what I do. I mean, how often have we seen this mentality in our life? Everything Jesus says they do is done for people to see. They make their phylacteries wide and their tassels on their garments long. Now, phylacteries. What were phylacteries? They were these little boxes containing pieces of scripture that they wore either on the forehead or the arm by those who wanted to display their piety. Now, this wasn't a bad practice. Matthew Long in the Westminster Bible Companion writes, the true purpose of these phylacteries and fringes was to keep the faithful ever mindful of the laws of God, right? Your words will always be on my mind, always be close to my heart. They put them on their door frames and things like that, so that they would be just a reminder to them, to assist them in prayer and worship. But according to Jesus, what had happened? These things had become a fashion statement. They had turned into something else other than what they were intended for. Now, do we see any modern day equivalents of that, of Christian fashion statements? Billboards, right. What about giant crosses that people wear? What about bumper stickers on cars? My God is alive, so sorry about yours, type of thing. This raises a good question. Is this faith or flesh? Praise or pomp? Now, Jesus was not saying that the Pharisees were necessarily bad people. Actually, by the standards of the day, they were some of the best people in their community. But Jesus was simply saying that some people like to put on a show of their religion, and it's not always authentic. Don't be taken in, he's saying. He was saying that pride of position was more important to the Pharisees than actual service to people. Appearances were more important to them than authenticity. Now, obviously, the Pharisees were not the only people who had given into this temptation to put on appearances. Throughout history, we see that people do this all the time. Appearances. Back in the 80s, when Italy began to make use of the seatbelts mandatory in automobiles, a psychiatrist in Naples invented what he called a security shirt. And it consisted of a white t-shirt with a diagonal black stripe painted on it designed to deceive the police into believing that the motorist was buckled up. Now, seems crazy today, doesn't it? But do you remember when seatbelts became a law and how much resistance there was to it? I mean, you know, going back to our wild, crazy childhood, I mean, I can remember laying in the back of the station wagon. I mean, no one wore seatbelts. You know, moms breastfed their kids in the front seat, and I mean, it was just, I mean, no one did. And all of a sudden, we had this awakening, saying, wait, we should really probably be a lot safer in cars. But no one wanted to do it. They were restrictive. When they were first introduced to this country, we had some issues too. Maybe those t-shirts, the security shirts, would have sold well at that time. But if we were in an accident, we'd probably have to find a fake doctor that could stitch us up. Maybe people who people are more into appearances. Many people are more into appearances than authenticity, and sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. A young man who works for an investment house was about to become a father for the first time, and he was impressed and very appreciative at the interest his business associates took in the news that his wife was going to have a baby. Every day, one or more of them would drop in to his desk and inquire, "How's your wife doing? What did the doc say? Any news yet? How many more days?" What he didn't know was that his colleagues had started an office pool on when the baby would arrive. So every one of his colleagues had placed a bet on when the baby, the happy occasion would occur. The interest in his affairs really concerned no more than a greedy desire to win the office pool. Now, I'm not going to ask us today how many of us have ever faked interest in someone because it was good business or simply out of courtesy. All of us are guilty of such interest at some time or another. All of us are guilty of some hypocrisy. I got a chuckle from an ad that appeared in a small college town paper during the days before the annual Parents' Weekend at college. The ad was sponsored by a tavern frequently frequented by students of the college. Before the Parents' Weekend, the ad read this: "Bring your parents to lunch for lunch Saturday at the tavern," and they said, "We'll pretend we don't know you." Pretty good advertising. But it was challenged, and I think one-upped by a college chaplain who posted this version of the same ad on the campus bulletin board. He read, "Bring your parents to chapel on Sunday, and we'll pretend we do know you." Appearances versus authenticity. It's rampant in our society. Don't believe me? Have you checked your labels on your grocery items lately? You may be in for a surprise. According to the U.S. News and World Report, some manufacturers are selling us the same size boxes and packages that we're accustomed to. But what are they doing? They're putting less and less in it. Have you ever noticed that we don't get a gallon of ice cream anymore? Have you noticed that peanut butter, if you look at the jars, they have deeper indents in the bottom? A box of well-known detergent that once had 61 ounces now only contains 55. Same with same size box, less soap. Peanut butter, ice cream, look at this. Cereal, that weighed 8.7, used to be 11. It's the same size box, maybe just slightly thinner, almost as tall. How something is wrapped doesn't always show us what's on the inside. Amen. It's true with people, as well as boxes of detergent and Applejack cereal. The Pharisees whom Jesus criticized were into appearances rather than authenticity. On this point, Jesus was the very opposite from the Pharisees. Jesus is only concerned with what's in the heart and not with what's on the outside. Dr. Ed Young tells of a friend of his when he was a young man named Walter Carroll. Walter was an atheist. He was a good guy, though. He just didn't believe in God, said Ed. One Sunday afternoon, says Young, his friend Walter looked at him and said, "Eddie, do you believe there's a God?" Ed said, "Sure, Walter, I do. I believe there's a God." And Walter responded and said, "You don't live like it." Ed said, "What do you mean?" Walter said, "Well, you live just like I do. I'm an atheist. I don't believe there's a God, and I live like there's no God, and we're buddies. You do everything I do. You say there's a God, and yet you don't live as if there's a God. Don't you have enough sense to know that if there's a God, you can get to know Him and live the way He wants you to live? That's the most important thing in life?" Ed Young says, "That was the greatest sermon I've ever heard." God used the mouth of an atheist. He said, "I'll never forget it. I couldn't answer. I went to my room, dropped down on my knees, and said, 'Right there, Lord, if you're in there, I know you're in there. I believe Jesus is your son, and I've gotten away from that. Away from my background when I got away from home. Just lead me. I'm yours.'" Some of us have been there, haven't we? There was a time when how you lived was not in accordance with what you believed. You lived more in tune with the crowd than with the cross. That happens. We say something with our lips, but our hearts are somewhere else altogether. But the truth is, the most effective witness we can make to our faith in Christ is simply to live out what we believe. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to be fake religious fanatics. It is simply to be real. It means living not as fans, but as followers of Jesus. Chuck Swindoll once said this. He said, "The one person, an evangelist, that he admired most was a guy named Dawson Trotman. Trotman was the founder of the Navigators, a worldwide organization dedicated to training Christian believers to share their faith. Trotman died after helping two helping rescue 2 drowning girls. When Dawson Trotman passed away, as Chuck said, he probably left a legacy of discipleship on this earth that will never be matched, except perhaps in the life of Jesus Christ himself. Swindoll says he believes wholeheartedly in the methods of discipleship that Trotman taught and emulated through his days. He died in 1956 in Schroon Lake, New York. He died of all things in the midst of an area that he was an expert in. He had drowned. He was an expert swimmer. The last few moments he had in the water, he lifted one girl out, and he went down and got another girl and lifted her out of the water, and then he was overcome and not found until later when a dragnet was able to pull him out. Time magazine ran an article on Trotman's life the next week, and they put a caption beneath his name which read, "Always holding somebody up." In one sentence, says Swindoll, that was Trotman's life. Investment in people, holding them up. According to people who knew Trotman best, this is why he influenced so many people in Christian discipleship. He lived what he believed. Nothing fake, nothing phony. He tried his best to follow Jesus. He was a follower of Christ and a servant of humanity. What more can be said about any human being? Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, "The teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. So you must be careful to do everything they tell you, but do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach." Trotman practiced what he preached. How about you? Are you giving your all to the Master? Bill Hybels, the senior pastor of Willow Creek Community Church, said it best. He said, "It's easy to give God 95% of our lives. It's the last 5% that's the most difficult. And it's 95%, and 95% commitment to Christ is still 5% short." That's what's keeping us from achieving God's dream for our lives, that critical 5%. Fake news, it's all around us. Fake stories. Photoshop. You can't believe anything you see anymore. It used to be the most reliable thing we had. Photo evidence, proof. Today it doesn't mean anything. Are we talking about fake news here this morning? No. We're talking a little bit about fake religion today. Pride of position was more important to the Pharisees than service to people. Appearances were more important to them than authenticity. Jesus was the very opposite of the Pharisees. Jesus was concerned with what was in the heart and not how things appear on the outside. The most effective witness we can make in our faith is simply to live out what we believe. We talk about that all the time here, don't we? To be real, to be authentic, living your faith in your life, not just trying to fit your faith into your lives. It's a big difference. It's a big difference. I like having fun. I like doing fun things. And I think that we can be a part of this world and enjoy people's company and still be a positive influence in their lives for God. I really, truly believe that. Because if we let our faith be the first and most important thing in our life, then we can enjoy our life and enjoy our friends. And God can flow in and through that relationship. We can try to impress people, or we can love them because God loves them. Let's forget about all the things we don't have. Let's forget about what the Kardashians are doing. Let's forget about what TMZ is saying that the next best celebrity thing is. And let's focus on what we do have. What is it that we have? Think about that in each of your lives. What is it that you have? That you have to be thankful for. We do spend a lot of time, and especially as we're approaching the holidays, news commercial after commercial after commercial will tell us of all the things we don't have. Would I like to wake up on Christmas morning and have a Lexus in my front yard with a big red bow on it? That would be incredible. The December to remember savings is here at the Lexus dealership. Truth is, I'm happy with what I do have and the people that I have to share it with. Amen. I want to leave us this morning with the wonderful words of Paul to the church of Thessalonica. And I want to ask this of each of us, but even more so of myself, that every day and in all things and in every situation, no matter what has been done to us, what we may have seen, heard, or felt, no matter what hurts we've encountered or frustrations we have faced, that we would walk in a manner worthy of the God who calls us into his own kingdom in glory. Walk in a manner worthy of the calling in your life, because it's great. Amen.
Amen.